genealogies. And for that cause, guess what they did? They said Jesus was born of virgin birth. And Joseph and Mary didn't have no sexual relationship. God just say, come on, Jesus, and you born. That don't make sense. It don't make sense to me. What it meant was there was a Essene brotherhood. And Mary and Joseph was a part of the Essene brotherhood. The Essene brotherhood was those that was living according to the word of God. And when Jesus was born, he was untouched. The virgin is pure and has been untouched. Because when you begin to look at that book that I told you about, you will see that Jesus was walking one day. And there was a sister that looked real fine, just like you. And when she was walking, Jesus got caught up. See, because Jesus had to go through all the ways of life too, just like Drew Ali. He got caught up because of the music and the beauty of this sister. And Jesus said, man, let me go and get myself together. So all of us have to go through all the ways of life. We all have certain characters in us. And we got to get these things out of us to be able to be one with our Father God Allah. Islam, if there is anything lovely, if there is anything desirable, if there's anything within the reach of man that is worthy of praise, is it that knowledge? And yet, who is it that obtaineth it? The statesman proclaimeth that he have it. The ruler of the people claimeth the praise of it, but findeth the subject that he possesses it. Evil is not requisite to man, neither vice can be necessary to be tolerated. Yet how many evils are committed by the convenience of the laws? How many crimes committed by the decree of the council? But be wise, O rulers, and learn, O thou that art to command the nations. One crime authorized by thee is worse than the escape of 10 from punishment. End of quote. At this time, I'd like to recite the Moorish American prayer that was given to us by our holy and illustrious prophet, Noble Drew Ali, in 1913. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation by night and by day through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. First off, I'd like to rise to give praise to Allah. I would like to give praise to Allah because it is He who is the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I'd like to give honor to Allah's holy and illustrious prophet, Noble Drew Ali, the founder of our address, the Moorish Science Temple of America, period. I'd like to give honor to the forerunner to the prophet, Noble Drew Ali, Marcus Moses Garvey. I'd like to give honor to Marcus Moses Garvey because it was he who said, up, up, you mighty race, you can accomplish what you will. I'd like to give honor to all the officials in the Moorish Science Temple of America, here, there, and everywhere. I'd like to give honor to our two flags, the flag of our origin and the flag of our birth. And honor to our charter that gives us the right to function in these United States and throughout the world without molestation or ridicule of any kind. I'd like to give honor to our two flags because every citizen in this government flies two flags. And when you begin to talk about the red, the black, and the green flag, That was the flag of Marcus Garvey's organization, the UNIA. That was not his national flag because he had a nationality. He was born in St. Anne's Bay, Jamaica. I'd like to give honor to all liturgy pertaining to Islam in the Moorish Science Temple of America. At this time, because this is Negro History Month. Now, Carter G. Woodson had a good idea, I guess, and he came with Negro History Month. Some people call it Colored History Month. Some people call it Black History Month. But when you talk about Negro, when you talk about colored, and when you talk about black, these are slave names. And we're going to talk about that today because this is Negro History Month. And we're going to talk about some things that's imperative that the youth hear, because if you don't hear it from me, you might don't hear it for a long time. So I want to read from a chapter in the Moorish Holy Quran. I want to read from on page 44. And the chapter that I'm going to read from is chapter 36. And the title of the chapter is Know Thyself. And see, before I read the verse, see, we talking about know thyself. But Noble Drew Ali came and told the Moorish American that we had two selves. We had a higher self and we had a lower self. He said the higher self is the mother of virtues and the harmonies of life that breeds justice, mercy, love, and right. And he also said that the higher self is human spirit, clothed with soul, made in the form of Allah. He said that the lower self is the carnal self, is a body of desires, is a reflection of a higher self distorted by the murky ethers of the flesh. And he said that the lower self breeds hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms. So we're going to talk about yourself because there's two selves, but the Holy Prophet Noble Drew Ali said we got to crush one under our feet and tame the other to our purpose. And which one we must crush is the lower self, because this is a body of desire, it's a reflection of the higher self, but it's distorted by the murky ethers of the flesh. So I'm going to read from verse 7. I'm going to read from verse 7 this evening because we went into this verse in Sunday school. And in Sunday school, we got a good understanding when we went into this verse. So let me read it again. Verse 7. It says, the body remained perfect after it has fled. Therefore, it is no part of it. It is immaterial, therefore it is eternal. It is free to act, therefore it is accountable for its actions. Man, this brother's saying some stuff to us in this divine creed that I'm going to have to try to get some understanding of it. Because the prophets say that the body remained perfect after it is fled. I can see why them dudes over there on that natural side don't want to get into this, because they have to get into their higher self to understand it. So if the body remained perfect after it is fled, what is he talking about? What have fled from the body? We're talking about the spirit, because it is the spirit that actuates and directs the flesh. So say for instance that Lynch-Bey passed, and then Lynch-Bey going over, laying over there in that casket over there. You can tell Lynch-Bey because everybody come view the body, and they know that's that brother over there. You know why? Because the body remained perfect. The body is still perfect. It don't think, it don't reason, it don't have any understanding. But the spirit had left the body. And when the spirit leaves the body can't move no more. Because it is that spirit that actuates and directs the flesh. So what we need to learn is man is not the body, nor the soul. He's a spirit and a part of Allah. So if we say we spirit man, and we say we meet God in the spirit of truth, then if we spirit man, what spirit are we? Because you have a human spirit, you have a carnal spirit, and you have a divine spirit, and these are the spirits that actuate and direct this flesh. So it's always good to read something from the prophet when you're talking about know thyself. Because in ancient Egypt, on all of the walls, they had written down, know thyself. And this is one of the reasons why Allah sent Noah Ali to this earth, to teach you and me who we are and who our forefathers were. So praise Allah and honor the prophet, Noah Ali. I want to start my lesson off today because it's Negro History Month. And in dealing with this Negro History Month, I want to talk about some of the things that I've been hearing going on in the last couple of weeks. I heard one of our leaders up today was talking about joining the Masonic order. And it's very important that you listen to this because many of you that's in the church, you have no idea of what I'm getting ready to talk to you about. But Noah Ali told the Moorish Americans that he's taking the covers off of all secret organizations. And why would he say that? Because if there's a secret, the secret have to be about you, and the secret have to be about me. Now, there is this order of secrecy called the Eastern Star, the Masonic Order, or any other little organization that have pieces of things that come out of Egypt. But there's two passwords. There's two passwords in the Masonic Order. And the two passwords that's in the Masonic Order is Jacqueline and Boaz. And being that this is Negro History Month, and the reason why I keep saying Negro History Month is because when you begin to talk about our history, and you begin to talk about the Negro, you begin to talk about the colored, and you begin to talk about the black, your history didn't start until the close of the Civil War. Now, Noah Ali told the Moors something one time. He said, I want you to get a good European education. And once you get a good European education, then I could use you. And then we had 3 or 4 brothers. One of them went to school to be a doctor. One of them went to school to be a lawyer. And one of them went to school to be a mathematician. And then they came back to the prophet and say, Prophet, we got a good European education, and now you could use us. And then there was a brother sitting in the meeting that was a real bad guy coming up. And he stayed in the penitentiary. And when he came home, Drew Ali looked at him and said, I could use him now because he have a good European education. Because when you begin to talk about medicine, or when you begin to talk about mathematics, you're going back to Egypt. You're talking about a brother by the name of Imhotep, and you're talking about another brother named Akhenaten. You don't hear none of this when you talk about this history month, because these are things they can't tell you. Because when you begin to talk about this history month of Negro, colored, and black, listen to this. You're talking about civil rights. Civil rights is a non-political issue because Drew Ali told us that we become human when you took on form and pigmentation. And our brothers and sisters is fighting hard because of civil rights. Now let me go back to a lesson that I gave you before about civil rights. There was a brother by the name of Malcolm Little. And Malcolm Little went to the UN because he was kind of messed up in how the government was carrying us as a people. And the Secretary General who he sat down with was a brother by the name of U Thump. And he told U Thump, he said, man, I want to bring the United States before the World Court and charge genocide. He said, Malcolm, you're a bad brother. And we always honored to hear what you have to say. But we already have a representative for the United States. What nation of people do you represent? He said, I represent the black man. He said, come on, man, you crazy. You was around, Malcolm, when we wasn't calling ourselves black. We stopped calling ourselves black after Martin Luther King got killed. Before Martin Luther King got killed, we was colored. We was Negro. And Nova Giraldi told us that Negro is a name given to a river in West Africa by Moors because it contained black water. Now, what I have with me today is a copy of my birth certificate. This is a copy of my birth certificate, and it tells you that I was born in Washington, D.C. at Walter Reed Army Hospital. It tells you that my mother and my father was Negroes. This is way before you call yourself black. But when it came to me, it said what my parents was. It didn't say what I was, because we know that Negro is a name given to a river in West Africa by Moors because it contained black water. And when we was investigating this Negro River, we come to find out that it's in Brazil. Now, Giraldi say the Negro River is in West Africa, but when we investigate, and through scientific study and investigation, you be what you know, we find out that the Negro River is in Brazil. Now, let's look at this, because we're going back to what is known as the Berlin Conference. And when the Berlin Conference was in full manifest, they took this part of Africa, they took that part of Africa. But see, the Berlin Conference, it wasn't just dealing with Africa, it was dealing with the whole world. That's why when you look at Morocco today, we're going to look at Morocco today, and we know that Morocco did not get its independence until March 2nd, 1956, from under the French rule. So this flag was not being flown in Morocco. But what we are having a problem with during this Negro History Month, all those years that this flag was not being flown in Morocco, it was the French flag that was being flown. So now, why is this flag going back to Morocco with the French? And you took down the French flag because you want the French to be the Moroccans. Because when they say that Morocco is the first nation that had a treaty with the United States, what Moors are you talking about? You can't be talking about those that's in Morocco today, because at that time they didn't have the flag. So when you begin to talk about those who had the treaty with the United States, you're talking about me. And it's dealing with Queen Isabella. It's dealing with Ferdinand. Not just Queen Elizabeth, her girlfriend Isabella. When her and Ferdinand got married, then that's how we was able to be defeated and come out of Spain. So let me get back to this Masonic stuff now. And the reason why I want to get back, because there was a brother by the name of Ward Dean Muhammad. And Ward Dean Muhammad was the son of Elijah Muhammad. And when Elijah passed, he put the leadership in the hands of his son. And his son had everybody to change their name. They started changing their name to Yusuf and Muhammad and all these other different kind of names. The girls are naming Khadijah and all these different other names. But he told all of the sisters, he said, if any of you have a name as Ruth, he said, don't get rid of that. Keep that name. And the reason why he said keep that name because Drew Ali said he's taking all the covers of all these organizations because when you begin to talk about Boaz, Boaz is the brother that married Ruth. And from that union came Jesse, Obed, King David, Solomon. So when you begin to talk about King David, and when you begin to talk about Solomon, and know what Drew Ali says, some of the great fathers through which Jesus came are Abraham, Boaz by Ruth, Jesse, King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, and Joseph by Mary. Now look at that. So when you hear Solomon and David talking about the 23rd Psalm, when they say the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. We all think that when you say the Lord is my shepherd, that we're talking about Jesus. But it's unintelligent if he's talking about Jesus, because when Solomon and David wrote the Psalm, Jesus wasn't even born yet. Look at it. Abraham, Boaz by Ruth, Jesse, King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, and then there goes Jesus way down there. But now we mention Boaz, and he married Ruth. But Jesus' mother name was Mary. And Mary had a mother. And Mary's mother's name was Anna. They don't talk about that in the Bible. But Anna had a husband. And Anna's husband's name was Jacquin. So Jacquin and Boaz are the two pillars of that order that Noble Drew Ali said he was going to take the covers off. Why? Because you took my Jesus, you buried my Jesus in Vatican Square, and you took on the name. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Now, everybody I know, if somebody refers them to a book, the first thing they're going to ask you, who is the author of this book that I'm about ready to read? But there's only one book that people don't ask you who is the author of that book. Now, why is that? Well, we're talking about the Holy Bible. And when we talk about the Holy Bible, we know that there's a guy named James Stewart. And James Stewart is King James. And let me tell you some of the things that James Stewart done. There's a brother by the name of Noah. And Noah had an ark. And they said on this ark of Noah, they came many cubits high, and they came 2 by 2. The levels of consciousness, the many cubits high, is levels of consciousness. But when you begin to talk about they came 2 by 2, I just told you that you all said we have 2 cells. And this ark is just like the temple. Within you is the ark of God. So within you, they came 2 by 2. You got a higher self and you got a lower self. And all these teachers were taught to us in Egypt. Because Noble Drew Ali is not just the prophet, he's also Professor Drew of the Egyptian Adat. So Drew Ali brought us all these things to save us from the wrath of Allah. And the only way you're going to be saved from the wrath of Allah if you learn these things that will free you. Now, right here on the book, the Holy Prophet told us about 711 when the Moors went into Spain. And he said that we stayed in Spain from 711 to 1492. So now we're looking at the Ottoman Turks in 1453 when they fought with the Byzantine Empire. That's 1453. In 1453, we were still in Europe, giving Europe civilization. But what you got to understand is, it's so deep, because the Moorish Temple of America is the only nation that have a membership. No other nation in the world have a membership other than the Moorish Temple of America. And why is that? because Drew Ali gave us something different. He also told us that we was an organization. He said this organization of the Moorish Science Temple of America is not to cause any confusion or to overthrow the laws and constitution of the said government, but to obey hereby. So we're a nation of people within the nation. Now, I need some answers during this Negro History Month, because Drew Ali told us also that there's never been a prophet that come out of Europe. And if there's a prophet that come out of Europe, I would like to know who he was or who he is. Because we know it wasn't Muhammad. We know it wasn't Buddha. We know it wasn't Confucius. And we know it wasn't Drew Ali. Matter of fact, Nova Drew Ali told the Moors something else too. Because they call him Sharif in other parts of the world, because the whole world know about Drew Ali other than you. In 1928, they gave Drew Ali the mandate to the land, because he was able to tell the people who they were and who they are and who their forefathers were. Because this came from the Holy Prophet Nova Drew Ali. Everybody today talking about we Moors this, we this kind of Moor, we that kind of Moor. But I'm telling you, the Europeans took us so far away from our mind. If it wasn't for Drew Ali, you wouldn't know anything about the Moors, even those that's in Africa. You wouldn't know anything about the Moors, because even Nicky Giovanni said back in the 60s, where are the Moors? Are they extinct? Are they like the dinosaur? No. The Moors are calling themselves Negro, colored, and black. Now let me get back to this ark. They said Noah had 3 sons. That's what it says in the Bible now, because I'm a master of the Bible. I was raised up in it. A lot of people don't know that. And they say Noah had 3 sons. And they said Noah's 3 sons were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. I'm diametrically opposed to that, because I can think a little bit. And you know good and well, when anybody hears you say anything about Ham, you know that they're talking about the burnt face, or you know that they're talking about Africa. But now you say that Noah had 3 sons, and they done made Shem the oldest son and not Ham. The same with your flag. In Morocco today, the French is flying our Moorish flag, because until 1956, this Moorish flag was not being flown in Morocco. We had the Moorish flag here in 1913. Nova Drew Ali gave it to us when it wasn't even being flown in Morocco, because we were talking about nationality and we were talking about citizenship. Now, this Negro History Month is talking about civil rights. Now, you know, when you begin to talk about civil rights, and when you begin to talk about a civil issue, you got to go back to your Moorish Quran too, because Nova Drew Ali have in our Moorish Quran Roman numbers. And when you look at the word civil law or civil anything, it takes you right back to Germany. It takes you back to the Berlin Conference. And these are they who took Jesus and buried him in Vatican Square, took on the name, because we say from the east comes all light. They said that when Rome was in the Dark Ages, we was teaching the everlasting gospel to the sons of men. Now they done took Jacqueline, they done took Boaz, used them as passwords, because they're your father and there's my mother. But we have to understand this. Recitation is no sign of elevation. And you can quote all day long, talk about it all day long, but truth don't need no support. Man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And there is no one who is able to change man from the decent nature of his mother and father unless his power extends beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. In this Negro History Month, nobody say anything about Egypt. All we talk about is you marching over a bridge, and one of the baseball players was hard to get in the game. You're not talking or to learn how to dance, the way that the Negro, colored, and black did, you're not talking anything about your line genealogy. Because it says the line genealogy through which Jesus came. Because when you talk about Jesus, Jesus means justice. Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judah in the house of David. Jesus' father and mother was of the Essene brotherhood, the same brotherhood that Drew Ali brought to you and me. Because that is your brother. They stole my Jesus, buried him in Vatican Square, and took on the name. So now everybody have a problem with the Moorish Americans saying that they're not Negro, colored, and black. I remember when we was Negroes. I remember when we was colored. I remember when we was black. But I didn't remember when we was Moorish Americans until Drew Ali came. So now, you say Moroccans? What Moroccans are you talking about? Are you talking about French Morocco? Are you talking about Spanish Morocco? Or are you talking about the Moroccan Empire that's here right here in the United States now? So now, you remember when Martin Luther King had them boycotts down in the South, and for about 6 months to a year, they was walking back and forth to work to change things, and the bus and the whoever else, transportation, they had to come to some kind of agreement. The same thing getting ready to transpire in this nation when you begin to understand that you are not Negro, colored, and black. The only black flag I know is the one that killed roaches. If you have the forefathers yesterday, where are the Moors at? Are the Moors distinct? Because when we going to have Moorish History Month? You keep talking about Negro, colored, and black History Month. Man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And there's no one who is able to change man from the decent nature of his mother and father unless his power extends beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. So now, Drew Ali say it is a sin for any group of people to violate the national constitutional laws of a free national government and cling to the name and principles that delude to slavery. We already got the law on our side, because let me tell you something. In every era of time, Allah sent one. He sent one with the methodology that's conducive to our growth and our development. So now, over 2,000 years ago, Chinese every year here in Portland, Oregon, they always have an event downtown with the brothers and sisters from the Chinese community talking about 5,000 years of Chinese history. But now when you begin to look and study history, even in the Moorish Quran, you come to find out that the Chinese come from you and me. At the same thing when you look into Saudi Arabia today. The reason why they don't let you see a picture of Muhammad, because there was a sister by the name of Sarah. And Sarah was Abraham's wife. But Sarah was not able to have children at this time. So Abraham had a handmaid named Hagar the Egyptian. And Hagar had a son for Abraham. Now we know Hagar is an Egyptian. Egyptian is an African looking just like me. So now if Hagar had the baby, he got to look like you and me. So that's another part of the Berlin Conference. I seen the people dancing from the East the other day, and all of them had their head covered. But what you see is Europeans with an accent. That's what you see in the East now, because they done took on our name, even this flag. I just told you some of the great fathers through which Jesus came is Abraham. And when I said Abraham, I went on to say Boaz by Ruth. Now, they said Ruth's husband died. This for us brothers. They said Ruth's husband died, and when Ruth's husband died, she became a widow. But you know what? We're talking about a nation of people now. So when you and me start living according to hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms, which are the attributes of Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and beast, we dead. So the man become dead. The man is dead. So Ruth, through the union with Boaz, they brought the Spirit of God back because Obed, Jesse, King David, and Solomon. And you always hear the Psalms of Solomon and David. So through the union of Ruth, through her womb, humanity came back in tune with the great God Allah. So this is something that Noble Drew Ali gave to the Moors. Another thing, the prophet told the Moors that there's one supreme issue to use for us to redeem that which was lost. And what is this issue? What is this supreme issue? The supreme issue is issuing you your nationality card. And I don't have to go down to the courthouse to get my nationality card. The reason why I don't have to go down to the courthouse to do anything because Noble Drew Ali came, and founded the Moorish Science Temple of America. If I have to go down to the courthouse to get some kind of paperwork, then there wouldn't be no need for Noble Drew Ali. But I read the chapter today, and I read the chapter, it said the body remained perfect after it is fled. We're talking about the Spirit. We're talking about the Spirit of God. If I went into the wilderness for self-examination, if I went in the wilderness, what other chapter would I carry with me into the wilderness? The only chapter that I would take with me into the wilderness is chapter 5, because you go on into the wilderness for self-examination. And the reason why we don't overcome certain things of our life is because we're just weak. The book said, and the prophet said, that he gave us a will to choose. So he gave me a will to do right, or he gave me a will to do wrong. I've been doing wrong because I'm too weak to do right. Because you can't serve two masters, nor can you straddle the fence. And I'm getting a chance to look at myself because I'm around a lot of people. And I'm looking at a lot of scheming. I'm looking at a lot of lying. And I'm looking at all these things, and people think you crazy. They think you don't have no understanding of what you're talking about. But see, the will of man make possible the action of the Holy Breath. Now, we can't do nothing in the community. We keep talking about we want unity. We need to come together in unity. Now, how can we come together in unity until you first come in unity with the great God Allah yourself? So you got to come in unity with God. Before you can start dealing with your brothers and your sisters, you must come in unity with God. And when you come in unity with God, then you can start living according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. In the church, they call it the fruit of the Spirit. Long suffering, all that. Once you come under that Spirit, then you become one with God. In the Muslim community, what do they have? They call it the Kalima Shahada, the 5 pillars. They have something that you live according to on this earth, and in doing so, it will help elevate you to another level. Because, see, you got to understand that this flesh that we are in, you got to understand it. This flesh that we are in do not think. This flesh that we are in do not reason. And our blood have no understanding. It is our spirit that actuate and direct the flesh. Brother said, man, I remember years ago, man, you hit me. I said, I'm going to hit you again because you're still doing the same thing that you did 100 years ago. See? So what we have to do is understand that our forefathers, there's an Ethiopia. I had a cousin named Tawana out of Huntsville, Alabama. And my mother passed. And my cousin, I was going away though, and my cousin wrote something in my mother's obituary. And she said in that obituary, if you want to see Aunt Mimi again, you better get right with God. And I keep going back to a lesson that people don't want to look at. We think that when you pay, I know a brother killed 100 people, stabbed 100 people. So he died. They got him, he died. And everybody say, he gone on to a better place. That don't make sense. Because you already say, of many ages, man will tarry until his lessons are learned. So you might have to come back on this plane of things made manifest 1,000,000 times until you learn your lessons. So if you want to get close to God, you got to start doing godly things so you become a part of that ether. You know how you go into a place, a room or something? And when you go into the room, you say, man, I can cut it with a knife. They're talking about that ether. Because this physical flesh that I'm in is an ether plane. But it's a dense ether, an ether that you can see. But there's another ether plane that you can't see. It's a vibration. It's a spirit. And it's a, you know, they used to sing a song when I was a child, say it's a highway to heaven. None can walk up there but the pure at heart. It's a highway to heaven. You must walk on up the King's Highway. And walking up the King's Highway is just like you climbing Jacob's ladder. And climbing Jacob's ladder, every round gets higher and higher. You know, when you're in school, first you was in the first grade. Then if you pass, you go to the second grade. Me, when I went to the first grade, I didn't even go to the second grade. They gave me something called junior primary. I felt bad with that all my life because I was a grade behind all my friends. But I ain't make no difference because all my friends was 100 years old anyway. I didn't realize they that much older than me coming up. I mean, we had a brother in the 7th grade with 15. You know, I mean, 20. You about in D.C., yeah, you're in the 10th grade, and you're reading the book, Tom, Come Tom, and Run Dick, and One Grain. Then Europeans did a good job. I was in the 10th grade and read Run, Dick, and James and Smart. And I didn't want to learn no more because I done seen too much. I done heard so much. I done heard the old folks talk. My mother had one of them pictures in the house with the Kennedys and Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement. And I went through all of that. We went through it. I remember when Martin Luther King got killed and they had the riots. But our people showed something that Rome never knew that was in full manifest. And the sheiks talk about it right now to certain people. The sheiks that talk, you know, and they saying that something going to transpire because the law is in control. Drew Ali said that when he left this plane of things made manifest, he could do more for us on another plane. And we think that it's over. When things transpire with you in your life, your mother's pulling back on you. Your father is pulling back on you. Your family is pulling back on you. You know, all our people. They call it the prayer warriors. See? They call them prayer warriors, those in the church. And they're talking about prayer warriors, and they pray because we are a praying people. That's why you look now, you see all our brothers, they wearing their pants real low, and then back in the day, during the civil rights era, they wore suits. You know why? Because they was going to the church. They had the spirit in them. What the Europeans are doing, they separating us from the spiritual aspect, telling us that we don't want religion, we just want spirituality, because if you're talking about religion, they say religion is something that's organized, something that keep you moving in a different direction, because you come around people. They said, man, you need to stop trying to do this. You need to stop trying to do that, because when you do things that's diametrically opposed to what God say, because you become a European. In chapter 17, they're talking about Jesus. He made Claudia and Judith his ambassadors to Rome. He taught in Europe. He taught Europeans. He told the Europeans to give back to Caesar what belonged to Caesar. I ain't paying no mind. They tell me to give back to Caesar what belonged to Caesar. I get my first big pay, I'm going to go to Las Vegas. And when I get to Las Vegas, I'm going to Caesar's Palace. When they already told me to give back to Caesar what belonged to Caesar. So you know what? We're part of the problem. Because the whole world was known as Asia at one time. That's why in the book, it talk about the 7 churches that was in Asia. And the reason why they talk about the 7 churches that was in Asia, because at that time, Europe was not even in existence. That's why I say, who are you? You're Asiatic Muslim. You're Asiatic Muslim because they ain't but 2 formulations, Asiatic and European. And we say in the upper room, one of them is the higher self and the other is the lower self. Why you call them the lower self? Because you done took my name. You done took all my name. You done stole my Jesus. You got Jesus looking like somebody else, and I don't blame you. If I was the lower self, I'd do the same thing. But this is the only time in history, the first time in history that they just took a people and destroyed. I looked at a tape the other day about Muhammad. And when you look in the Moorish Quran and you look at the word Muhammad and you look at the word Muslim, Noble Drew Ali didn't use a U. He didn't use a U. Now, you know there's no O in the Arabic language. But when Noble Drew Ali said Muslim, he wasn't talking about us. He said that's Eastern. We over here, our mission right here is in the West. So he said Muslim. And a Muslim is one who submits his will to Allah. Now, how do we submit our will to Allah? By living according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. It's hard, too. It's hard to live according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Loving your brothers and sisters and telling them the truth, that they live in peace, have freedom, and justice will come to us all, the highest principles known to man. And if we live this moral and clean life, then we coming close to God. Now, a lot of people, they talking about, man, we call him Jehovah. That's okay. Or we call him Allah. We call him Zeus. No matter what you call him, because you got different languages. The Chinese ain't going to call him God. The Vietnamese ain't going to call him God or Allah. Every nation have a different name for Allah, but he's the causeless cause, the rootless root from which all things have grown. That's why I love it when Drew Ali gave us Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, and Confucius, because he's locking everybody back in. He's locking all of us back in. Because you have to understand nationality is the order of the day, and nationality is the only thing is going to put us back in line with the necessities of the Moorish Science Temple of America, because Dred Scott of 1857, Chief Justice Roger B. Taney, said the words all men are created equal never meant to apply to the Negro, the colored, and the black. So now, when you hear that old saying about Scott free, Scott never did get free because Scott never proclaimed his nationality. Now, Woodrow Wilson. When Woodrow Wilson became president-elect, Noble Drew Ali went to see him. So you have a lot of people don't even have the record of the same thing and call yourself Moor. Check the dates. When this brother was elect president, Noble Drew Ali went to him, and this is when they had that conversation. And he told that brother that if you just bring us 50,000, you give us the mandate, because we was asking for something else at first. And then he gave us everything that we supposed to have. Drew Ali said, take these, I bought you everything that it take to save a nation. Now take it and save yourself. So if I meet a Moorish American, I got 50 years in almost in the Moorish Science Temple. You want to know who the real Moorish Americans are, you can look at their character. One of the things you have to look at, they have to know their Moorish American prayer, because right here in Portland, I talk to a lot of brothers, tell me they come down to some kind of sheik or whatever. They don't know the Moorish American prayer. They don't know the divine constitution and bylaws, their addition law, their questionnaire, and this is what puts you back in tune with God. These are things that Noble Drew Ali, matter of fact, Noble Drew Ali told the Moors that go to your meeting and read all your laws and sit there for 15, 20 minutes. If nobody comes, then you can go. But you got to open up the meeting according to the Circle 7 and love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I wanted to know why the prophet didn't bring the Ankh. They said, well, you know, the Ankh have a lot to do with the woman. But when you talk about the 7 is the number of perfection. We're talking about woman and man. So Drew Ali took us in another ether plane. He took us a little high. He took us spiritual. Because you know they're talking about the 7 golden candlesticks, the 7 this and the 7 that, and there's 7 layers of skin. So here in the Moorish Science Temple of America was founded by Prophet Noble Drew Ali for the express and profound purpose. We have a divine constitution and bylaws that was given to us in 1913. And our divine constitution and bylaws, Act 6, says, with us, all members must proclaim their nationality. And we are teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may know that they are part and parcel of this said government, and know that they are not Negroes, colored folk, black people, or Ethiopians, because these names were given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now, and all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live and the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained Noble Drew Ali the prophet to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are descendants of the ancient Moabites who inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. So now when you look at brothers in Barbados, where my father from, or Jamaica, all these brothers and sisters come from West Africa. That's where the slave trade came from, because Drew Ali tells us this right here in the book. Now, it talks about these names was given to us in one time in our additional laws and a different time in another piece of literature, because we was called Negro, colored, and black in 1774. But the United States was not recognized as having this independence from the mother country, England, so it came officially on record in 1779, because they got their independence in 1776. So it's always an honor to come through you to talk to you about this black history, this colored history, and this Negro history month. Because the only black flag I know, I like to reiterate, is the one that killed roaches. And this flag here, the red flag with the 5-pointed green star in the center, this is the Star of David. Because David is the grandson of Ruth the Moabite. And if that's the case, then the Star of David is not a hectagram. This is the Star of David. So it's always an honor to be able to come before our Portland listening audience to talk to you about the last prophet in these days and time, Prophet Noble Drew Ali. The need for unity is so great that it is better to unite than to eat, sleep, drink, talk, or walk. This is the hour of deception. A house divided cannot stand. And for that cause, we are preparing ourselves to become one again with thy Father, God Allah. We must remember the mighty and great need for unity. We must remember the cause of our fall. And why is it so hard for this age to comprehend the resurrection of the dead? At this time, I'd like to recite the Moorish American prayer, a prayer that Noble Drew Ali gave us in 1913. We don't go nowhere without saying this prayer, because there's a saving power in this prayer. And this is the same prayer that got me sitting right here where I am today, because prayer changes things. My mother told me that. But at this time, I'd like to recite the Moorish American prayer. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. all in my neighborhood. I'm gonna let it shine all in my neighborhood. I'm gonna let it shine all in my neighborhood. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine all in my home. I'm gonna let it shine all in my home. I'm gonna let it shine all in my home. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Praise Allah and honor the Prophet. Know what you all did. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.